Let me be honest with you right from the start. What I am about to tell you genuinely surprised me, and I have been studying brain health and aging for over 2 decades. There is a habit that millions of Americans over the age of 65 are doing every single day, believing with full confidence that it is one of the best things they can do for their health. Doctors recommend it. Nutritionists praise it. Your family probably encourages you to do it. And in most stages of life, it absolutely is beneficial. But here is what almost nobody is talking about. After the age of 65, doing this specific habit the wrong way, at the wrong time, or in the wrong amount, can actually accelerate cognitive decline, impair your memory, disrupt the critical communication between brain cells, and in some cases, quietly contribute to early signs of dementia. We are not talking about something obscure or rare. We are talking about something you likely did this morning. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what is happening inside your brain, why this particular habit becomes risky after 65, and most importantly, what simple adjustments you can make starting today to protect your brain for the decades ahead. This is not about fear. This is about giving you the real information that can genuinely change the quality of your life. So let us start at the very beginning, because to understand why this habit becomes harmful, you first need to understand what actually changes in the brain as we get older, and these changes are more profound than most people realize. By the time a person reaches their mid-60s, the brain has already been quietly changing for years. The volume of certain brain regions begins to shrink, particularly the hippocampus, which is the area most responsible for forming new memories and retrieving stored ones. Blood flow to the brain decreases. The protective coating around nerve fibers, called myelin, starts to thin out, which slows down how quickly electrical signals travel between neurons. The brain also becomes less efficient at clearing out toxic proteins that build up over time, including the amyloid plaques and tau tangles that researchers associate with Alzheimer's disease. Now, none of this is a death sentence. The brain is remarkably adaptable, and there are powerful things you can do to support it. But these changes do mean that habits that were completely harmless or even helpful in your 40s and 50s can start to interact with your aging brain in unexpected and sometimes damaging ways. That is the foundation of everything we are going to talk about today. Now here is where we get to the habit itself, and I want you to think about this carefully. The habit we are discussing is exercise. Specifically, the way many people over 65 approach their exercise routine based on advice that was designed for younger adults. Before you close this video or leave a comment saying this cannot be right, hear me out completely, because the nuance here is everything. Exercise itself is not the problem. In fact, physical activity remains one of the most powerful tools for brain health at any age. Regular movement increases blood flow to the brain, promotes the release of a chemical called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, which essentially acts like fertilizer for brain cells and helps reduce inflammation throughout the body and the brain. None of that changes after 65. What changes is the way the aging brain and body respond to certain types, intensities, and patterns of exercise. And this is where millions of well-meaning older adults are unknowingly causing themselves harm. Let us talk about the first major mistake, and this one is the most widespread. It is what researchers now call chronic high-intensity exercise without adequate recovery in older adults. Here is what happens. When you are in your 30s or 40s and you push yourself hard during a workout, your body goes through a stress response. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, spikes temporarily. Your heart rate goes up. Inflammation increases briefly in your muscles and joints. But because the younger body recovers efficiently, this stress response resolves quickly, and the result is stronger muscles, better cardiovascular function, and a resilient brain. After 65, the equation shifts in a very important way. The aging body produces more cortisol in response to the same level of physical stress, and it takes significantly longer to return cortisol levels back to baseline. A study published in the journal Neurobiology of Aging found that chronically elevated cortisol levels in older adults are directly associated with accelerated shrinkage of the hippocampus, the exact part of the brain that manages memory. In plain terms, if you are over 65 and you are regularly pushing yourself through intense workouts without giving your body and brain enough time to recover, you may be flooding your brain with a hormone that is literally shrinking your memory center day after day, week after week. Now, This does not mean you should stop exercising. That would be completely wrong advice. What it means is that the specific style of exercising matters enormously after 65, and most exercise recommendations were not designed with your aging brain specifically in mind. The popular advice to do high-intensity interval training, push your limits, feel the burn, and challenge yourself constantly comes largely from research done on younger populations. When applied without modification to older adults, particularly those over 65, it can trigger that prolonged cortisol response that your brain simply does not recover from as quickly anymore. There is a second dimension to this that almost never gets discussed in mainstream health content, and it involves something called exercise-induced neuroinflammation. Your brain has its own immune cells called microglia. In a healthy, well-functioning brain, microglia act like maintenance workers. They clean up cellular debris, fight infections, and repair damage. But when the brain is exposed to repeated stress signals, including the chemical signals that come from overexertion in older adults, microglia can shift into an overactive inflammatory state. Researchers call this microglial priming, and it is a phenomenon that becomes significantly more common after the age of 60. Once the microglia are in this primed, overactivated state, they start producing inflammatory chemicals called cytokines. These cytokines interfere with the communication between neurons, disrupt the process of forming new memories, and over time, damage the very brain tissue you are working so hard to protect. The cruel irony is that the person doing this harm to their brain genuinely believes they are helping it, because they have been told their whole life that more exercise means better health. There is also a third mechanism at work here that connects directly to something happening inside every single cell in your brain, and this one is perhaps the most surprising of all. It involves your mitochondria. You probably remember from school that mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell. They produce the energy your cells need to function. In your brain cells, mitochondria are especially critical because neurons require enormous amounts of energy to fire, communicate, and repair themselves. Here's the problem. After 65, mitochondrial efficiency in brain cells naturally declines. They become less effective at producing energy and more prone to producing harmful byproducts called reactive oxygen species, which are essentially unstable molecules that damage cellular structures. Now, moderate exercise actually helps mitochondria function better. Research consistently shows that walking, swimming, tai chi, and light resistance training all support mitochondrial health in aging brain cells. But when exercise intensity crosses into a zone that exceeds what the aging mitochondria can handle, they produce an excess of those reactive oxygen species, causing what scientists call oxidative stress. Think of it like a car engine that is being pushed beyond its design capacity. It starts to produce pollution and wear down faster than it was meant to. In the aging brain, oxidative stress from overexertion contributes to neuronal damage, accelerates the accumulation of those toxic proteins associated with dementia, and weakens the very cellular machinery that your brain depends on for thinking clearly. So what does all of this look like in real life? Because I know that statistics and biology are only meaningful if they connect to your actual experience. Think about someone you know, maybe yourself, who is committed to their health after retirement. They wake up every morning determined to stay fit. They push through a rigorous workout 5 or 6 days a week because they have read that staying active is the key to aging well. They feel virtuous about it. Their family praises them for it. And yet slowly, over months and years, they start noticing things. Difficulty remembering names they used to know easily. A sense of mental fog in the afternoons. Trouble concentrating during conversations. Feeling more irritable or emotionally reactive than they used to be. These are often dismissed as normal aging, or blamed on sleep problems, or attributed to stress. But in some cases, what is actually happening is that a well-intentioned but poorly calibrated exercise routine has been quietly, persistently working against their brain health. Not because exercise is bad, but because the type, timing, and intensity were wrong for where their brain and body actually are at this stage of life. Here's what the research tells us actually works. A landmark study from the University of British Columbia, which followed older adults over a 12-month period, found that moderate aerobic exercise, specifically walking at a pace that allows you to hold a conversation, increased the size of the hippocampus by approximately 2%. That is an extraordinary finding. In a population where hippocampal shrinkage is expected and associated with memory loss, they actually grew the memory center of the brain, not by intense training, not by pushing limits, but by consistent, moderate movement. Walking. That is the level of intensity that the aging brain thrives under. Another study published in JAMA Internal Medicine found that Tai Chi, which combines gentle movement with deep focused breathing, improved cognitive function in older adults more effectively than many higher intensity exercise protocols. The researchers attributed this to the dual benefit of physical movement combined with attentional engagement. The brain was being worked cognitively at the same time as the body was moving gently. The recovery piece is just as critical as the exercise itself, and this is the part that is almost universally underestimated. The brain does not get stronger during exercise. It gets stronger during recovery. During sleep and rest following physical activity, the brain undergoes a process called synaptic consolidation, where the neural connections stimulated during movement are strengthened and integrated. If you are exercising so frequently and so intensely that you are not getting adequate sleep and genuine rest days, you are essentially interrupting the exact process through which exercise benefits your brain. For adults over 65, most neuroscientists recommend no more than 4 to 5 days of moderate physical activity per week, with at least 2 full recovery days, and a strong emphasis on 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep every night. Many of the older adults I have encountered who are doing everything right with their diet and exercise are unknowingly sabotaging themselves by sleeping only 5 or 6 hours, which wipes out most of the cognitive benefit they worked so hard to earn. Now I want to give you something genuinely practical, because information without application is just trivia. If you are over 65 or you have a parent or loved one who is, here is a simple framework that aligns with the best current brain health research. First, make walking your primary cardiovascular exercise and aim for 30 to 45 minutes at a comfortable conversational pace, 4 or 5 days per week. If you want to add intensity, do it through duration, not speed. Walk a little longer rather than a lot faster. Second, add 2 days of light resistance training using body weight, resistance bands, or light free weights. Resistance training supports brain health through multiple pathways, including improving insulin sensitivity, which directly affects how well brain cells can use glucose as fuel. But keep it manageable. You should feel pleasantly tired afterward, not exhausted. Third, incorporate at least 1 session per week of something that requires both movement and mental engagement. Tai Chi, yoga, dancing, or even a sport like pickleball that demands coordination and strategy. These dual-task activities provide some of the strongest cognitive benefits of any form of exercise because they engage the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus simultaneously. Fourth, and I cannot emphasize this enough, prioritize sleep above everything else. No exercise routine, no matter how perfectly designed, can overcome the damage that chronic sleep deprivation does to the aging brain. If you are struggling with sleep quality, that is the first thing to address, even before you think about your workout schedule. There is one more thing I want to address before we close, because it ties everything together in a way that I think will genuinely stick with you. There is a concept in neuroscience called allostatic load, which refers to the cumulative wear and tear on the brain and body from chronic stress. Every stressor you encounter, whether it is emotional stress, physical stress, illness, poor sleep, or overexertion, adds to your allostatic load. When that load gets too high, the brain starts making trade-offs. It diverts resources away from long-term maintenance, memory consolidation, and cellular repair in order to manage the immediate demands being placed on it. Young brains can tolerate a high allostatic load for a long time without obvious consequences. Aging brains cannot. They are already managing more maintenance demands, more cellular cleanup, more inflammation regulation. When you add excessive physical stress on top of that through overexercise without recovery, you're tipping the balance in a way that speeds up the very aging process you are trying to slow down. The good news, and I want to make sure this lands clearly, is that these changes are not locked in. The brain retains a remarkable degree of plasticity even in the 7th and 8th decades of life. Studies consistently show that adults in their 60s, 70s, and even 80s who make the right adjustments to their exercise habits see measurable improvements in memory, processing speed, and overall cognitive function within 3 to 6 months. The brain can heal, adapt, and grow new connections at any age, as long as you give it the right conditions. The adjustments are not dramatic or difficult. They are mostly about doing slightly less with more intention, recovering more seriously, and choosing movement that engages both the body and the mind rather than just pushing the physical machine harder and harder. I want to hear from you now, because this is a conversation, not just a lecture. Have you or someone you love been dealing with unexpected brain fog, memory challenges, or mental fatigue despite staying active and eating well? Or maybe you have already made changes to your exercise routine as you have gotten older and noticed a real difference in how sharp and clear you feel mentally. Drop your experience in the comments below, because I genuinely read them and I learned from what you share. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you found this video valuable, share it with a friend or family member over 65 who is committed to their health, because this is the kind of information that can truly change someone's trajectory. The most powerful health decisions are the ones made with real knowledge, not just good intentions. Your brain is not just along for the ride in your body. It is the most precious thing you have, and it deserves an approach to health that is designed specifically for where you are right now, not where you were 20 years ago. Take care of it wisely, and it will take care of you for decades to come.